My name is Darren Hupke, and this is Pixels and Polygons. Welcome back, y'all. We've got another episode that we have done before. I actually recorded the first portion of this episode with my guest Brian a couple months back, actually, just waiting on a companion piece to pair it with. And so in a recent conversation with my brother, I was able to ask the same question. So we revisit the conversation of what's it, like average games? You know, what's a game, an average or a below average game that you personally enjoy or personally love? That kind of stands out to you. So I do like this question. It's kind of like that greatest game of all time type of question, that it's going to be different from everybody who answers it. And people probably have, many answers ready to go. So being able to come back to this conversation is always going to be fun. Because you don't hear some of these games as often as you do like those big ones. So that's what this episode's all about. Average games. And my first guess is returning guest Brian, and my second guest after the break is my brother Casey. So have some fun with this. I don't really have much else to say up at the top. Thanks for listening, y'all, and hopefully you're all enjoying the episodes. Last week I have of my Kickstarter running as well too, so if you have not already seen that or shared that and helped support that book, I've got my 32-bit library volume 4 book being funded on Kickstarter right now. So 7 days left. Next Friday will be the end of that campaign, and then it goes on to production and the less exciting part of the back end stuff, but still fun for me to do. That's why I keep doing them. But enjoy the episode, y'all. Have a good one. See you next week. This question, what is a game you love that you know isn't great, but that you still enjoy? Because that's going to be probably different for everybody. But yeah, what is an example? It doesn't have to be your favorite one or like the best or worst one, but just one from your list that you know it isn't quite fondly looked at by other folks, but you still find the joy in.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is one that I think a lot of people hate, like completely hate, or they think of it more like I do, which is it's problematic, it has issues, but it created this amazing path for the future. It explored a lot of original or semi-original ideas. And it, to me, like when people are like, I had a friend ask me, do you think it's a good game? That's what mattered. Like, do you think it's good? I'm like, yeah, I still think it's good. And that game is Castlevania 2 for the NES. So for people that aren't familiar with Simon's Quest, it's the one where they, split apart from the path the first one went on. This wasn't just a left to right linear adventure. This was more of a Metroidvania, or what we think of Metroidvania today. You can go left, right, up, down a little bit. You could explore mansions, which were kind of like the boss battle levels, although there was only a couple bosses and you could kind of skip some of them. And collect items, currency, day and night cycle. This is also a game that was notorious for having NPCs that lied to you, and some people think that's charming in retrospect, whereas a childhood version of me was really taking everything literally and never thought an NPC would ever lie to me, and I still can't believe they lied to me. It was also a game where, without the schoolyard gossip or Nintendo power, and the latter of which really informed the former, you probably would not have finished this game. And I don't mean that in Battletoads, jet speeder level is so hard, you're not going to beat it. I mean, how do I know I'm supposed to kneel in front of this cliff for this many seconds or hold this item while doing this really obscure thing? It's really opaque in the puzzle design and brutal because of it. For people that are like, oh, that's cool. Okay, it set the stage for the future. It led to games like Symphony of the Night, etc. Great foundation, but you don't want to play it. I will say there are like modified versions that you can try, ones that have like a built-in map and the NPCs are less heinous and a little more, helpful. So you could always do that if you don't want to have an actual walkthrough and you just want to enjoy it. But it did so much for like the future of this genre, the Metroidvania genre. Like it really invented so many things. It didn't invent day and night and those kind of things, but it created this incredible atmosphere where you're seeing this land, the Castlevania land. Everything's been destroyed and ruined, and the curse is running rampant, and the people are in despair. And you're realizing like this game doesn't have to just be linear. It doesn't have to just be in a castle. It can be around the castle. It doesn't have to be about a big epic final boss battle where you're fighting through all the minions. In fact, you just casually stroll through the castle. So they're telling a story in a way that was extremely atypical for the time. You're expecting the last level to be the hardest thing, and it's not. It's almost like a reward to you for getting through the grueling parts of this game. They just did so many interesting things. The whip upgrades, like the hidden floor tiles that you could kind of blow open with your holy water drops. All these things, like it's really fascinating. But it's not a great game. Like if I really break it down, it slows down to a crawl when you're inside the mansions and the frame rate is awful. The people lie to you, like I said. It's just all these little things, all these little quirks that keep it from being a great game, and it could have been.
Yeah. Yeah, that game was like almost unplayable for me as a young child because it's like, oh, I'm just going to keep walking in this direction and I'll get to like the end or whatever. And then like, no, I can go back and forth, and then day and night changed like the towns and everything. And looking back, like I love the game now, but it's definitely not in the top list of like my favorite Castlevanias or anything at all. But you gotta like love and appreciate what it was. I mean, essentially the game starts and the entire world is there. Like, you just have to be able to know how to access the certain points, like you said, like kneeling in those certain areas and everything. I wasn't able to beat it as a child. I don't think I've personally beaten that game, but I did have this VHS tape. What was it called? Like How to Score More Points in Video Games. And it had like this narrator guy who had like these white gloves. And I loved watching it over and over again, but one of them covered Simon's Quest and would talk about how to get through it and get to the end, and actually showed Dracula. So I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm not good enough to experience this as a younger gamer, but like I at least got to kind of see it that way. That's a good pick.
It's a great game. Awesome map too. I think everyone's familiar. Any retro gamer's familiar with the map that was in Nintendo Power, and it was also in the Japanese manual or a version of it, like a precursor to that. The map is actually pretty accurate if you really break it down and play it through. People have criticized it as not being helpful, but it's actually like an obscure but helpful map. Something I love. So good stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, I've got one. I've got a more recent but still decades old game. For me, like I picked this game just because it was one that, as you know, when I was younger, I remember like reading previews for it and like picking it out. Like, no, this is a game I want to play when it comes out, rain or shine. But it was hyped up as a Zelda killer and like Sony's answer to The Legend of Zelda and how it was going to mop the floor with it and everything. But the original Dark Cloud on PS2, like I was like beyond excited for from early previews because. What do they call it? Like the Georama mode or whatever. Like you could build a town and there was like a city building like aspect to it while you explored dungeons and fought bosses. And like there was just significant hype for it. I think ultimately reviewed wise, like critics and magazines at the time, they were mixed to positive. I think it wasn't like panned necessarily. It wasn't like a terrible game. But I think there's some people you meet who will absolutely be like, you know, disappointed by it and let down by it because it wasn't what like the hype was trying to make it out to be, which I think was a disservice to it because I don't think it was intended to be like a one-up like The Legend of Zelda. Like there's no way that was going to happen. But all of its mechanics, as flawed as they are, like they fit together. And especially now, like there is like this wave of especially from like games like Hades and things like the roguelite and roguelike items coming back. Like that's how the dungeons in Dark Cloud were. They were randomly generated through pieces and parts, and it was like a Shiren the Wanderer, or if people liked the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games in DS. Like those are, I guess, more of the popular games that kind of like had that same style of dungeon crawling. It was really cool and had like a really neat like weapon upgrade system as you played through it, in like this completely wild cast of characters that had no personality because they were only really like, you got to the flavor of the week town that they were from. You saw like a bit of backstory, but once their story was done, it was just a character you could cycle through and select when you were like low on health in a dungeon. But the town building stuff was really cool in between dungeons. As you went through floors, you found parts and pieces like buildings or NPCs or things, and you got to place them out on a world or on an area map. And once you started to gather a lot of them, like NPCs would say like, "Hey, you know, I missed the sound of running water," or like, "I used to hear like the waterfall out my window," and it'd be like, "Oh, so you'd have to like remove their home to like be near a waterfall," or somebody would say, "Oh, I liked it when the sun would rise, you know, out of my bedroom window," and then you'd have to go in there and you'd play like a puzzle with the city building stuff on top of like the dungeon crawling stuff. So there was just a lot of layers to it that I really loved. Isolated, all of them were problematic, like clunky controls, not fully like fleshed out and featured. Like you couldn't ever go like too deep in any one of those things, but just enough of it together made me really enjoy it. And I just remember being excited as a younger, I mean, I don't know how old I was. I was probably 12 or something like that, maybe when it came out, maybe a little older. I was probably older. But it was just like a good game for me at that time. And I think still to this day, like they re-released it for PS4. They did like, you know, a handful of PS2 games they re-released and everything that added like trophy support and everything. And I replayed it and got the platinum trophy, even though it was like, you know, a 60-hour grind just to get some of the obnoxious trophies out of that. But I was like, I can enjoy this. I actually do remember this. I am nostalgic for this. Like this is definitely a one for me. So I put up that time with it a second time through. That's how much I loved it. But yeah, definitely that's one that just rings my bell when I think about maybe a below average game on the surface, but one that I probably hold a lot higher than the average gamer for sure.
Do you think people, if they played it for the first time today, at least like on that more modernized version, do you think they would feel the same or like even worse because it's so dated?
I think it would be worse. I think it's like there's like a line. I guess it depends on what your retro line is and what your nostalgia line is. You know, like I can still play PS1 games and enjoy them because like I remember like the limitations of the graphics and the controls and things of that time. But if you try to ask somebody like today to play like a PS1 game, they might think the controls are too difficult and clunky and whatnot. And Dark Cloud, like a lot of those PS2 games are in a weird hazy area where like graphically that's like really low res textures, really muddy, like filtering, like the 3D graphics aren't as sharp, but they're not as like stylishly or timelessly looking as maybe pixel art games have like lasted over the years, and modern games with sharper 3D like resolutions like look a lot better. So there's really no sweet spot. So it doesn't look great and will only look worse now if you try to play. And mechanically it's slower paced. Like it definitely gets to like a crawl at some points and it's uneven. And we're in like an instant gratification, drop in, drop out, you know, like instant resume mode. Like it just, I don't think it was barely enjoyed by enough people then. I think now it would definitely be just, this is garbage. Let me move on to the next thing. This is too broken. I'm not into it. But it's okay. It came out for me. It's my thing. Me and 12 others can enjoy it and, you know, think that maybe Sony will revisit it one day, but they never will because that's Sony.
There's literally dozens of you, so that's good to hear.
it had a sequel, and I never really played much of that, and it tried to add a lot more like characterization, plot, and story, and involve the mechanics, and it all seemed like for the better. Like it all would have improved all of the flaws of the first one, but for whatever reason, I never just committed the time to enjoying it. It was called Dark Cloud 2 here, but like Dark Chronicle in like Europe and Japan. So that's one that I always think like maybe one day I'll go back and play that, but never have. It's available, just I haven't done.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them, but have never tried. So
yeah, it's definitely it's. If you haven't played it, you probably won't enjoy it unless for some reason you are that PS2 fan. You're like, no. Like that is an era that I still have a feel for, and I can still like understand the limitations of it and not judge it because of that. So maybe.
Sure.
But right on. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for chatting again. Then that's another episode down, and we'll definitely do many more in the future. I know
Sounds
that you had from the last time we talked. Were there anything new that you had, like restocks, announcements, new things coming up you want to plug for Retro Game Books, or is there anything maybe you want to kind of just use this moment for to kind of like promote about yourself?
I don't think anything's really changed. Just a lot of things still in the pipeline. A couple new books in the works. One that I'm working on. One that another author's working on. So that's all the same. Most things are in stock right now, so people can check that out. A few things that are out of stock will probably get restocked, but we'll see. Still planning on going to Portland Retro Gaming Expo in September. Not sure about other things this year, but kind of take them as they come. But yeah, just retrogamebooks.com. People can check it out. And if people want to chat, social media on half of those or most of them. Can't keep up, but you can find me.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks for chatting, Brian. We'll talk to you again in the future. But I have my brother Casey with me again for another episode. So Casey, if you wanted to answer this icebreaker question for me, you can share a little about. I mean, if you're playing something too, you want to maybe just share, like if you got some current gaming things you're doing and you want to let us know, that'd be great. But if not, what is your favorite animal companion from a video game? Answer us that question.
Dog meat. Pretty easy. I dog meat from Fallout's pretty high up there. There's not a lot of I guess, is Navi an animal companion? I mean, she's not a human. Do they have? Do the Fae have rights in the Kingdom of Zelda?
Yeah, but would you say that's a favorite? You enjoyed the constant hey,
Listen.
over here, hey.
No, I don't know. I don't know that I really track animal companions that much. Red 13 animal companion?
Sure. In your party as an animal?
Yeah. I mean, he was a great companion. What are some notable animal companions?
You got Daxter, you got Pikachu, you got any of the Pokemon.
Oh, Pokemon count as animal companions?
I mean, there are animals who are alongside you for your journey.
Whew. Yeah, I mean, dog meat's pretty high up there. I wish I had played any of the games. I mean, Epona, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Flamer, if you're a good friend of mine.
He's fast. He's a fast horse.
He's fast. It's a fast horse.
He called me out. I shared that on another episode, and he listened to that, and he was like, "Oh man, I got my all my business kind of announced there on that episode."
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go dog meat. Dog meat's definitely number one. Epona number two. I guess tip of the hat to Yoshi.
Yoshi, yeah, it's always a nice little free hit if you can catch him back again, hop back on, another free hit. Cool. Are you playing anything currently, or anything you're doing gaming related that's worth noting?
I play a lot of Magic the Gathering Arena. I've started playing Hearthstone again a little bit, but I literally logged in and I had like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of packs to open. And I just kind of was like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this right now. So I walked away from it. But MTG Arena, really love that. And then outside of that, I play semi-competitively in World of Warcraft. My guild just got another cutting edge achievement a few months ago now. And we finished out the tier, I think in the US 400 ranking. So not like an exceptionally high rank, but pretty good. Better than any of my friends that play hockey and say I play video games and waste my time.
All right. Well, cool. Well, then this episode we were going to answer a question, and the question was in front of me. And yeah. What's a game that you know isn't great, or maybe be considered below average, but that you still love?
Oh, I got one for you that I really had to dig deep mentally and like block my train of thought out until it clicked. But so my wife and I, when we were living together originally, or sorry, my ex-girlfriend, my wife, we lived together when we were dating, and still currently do as we're married. We She didn't play a lot of video games. Like I was mainly like I was in a early 20s, constantly replaying Final Fantasy VII or Resident Evil 2 or one of the games that I had on a PlayStation because we didn't make a lot of money or anything, and kind of I just had the games I had were the games I had. But there was a game on GameCube that she would play that she loved the hell out of, and it was the only game that I could get her to play with me. And that game will forever be burned into my heart as a great game, and everyone else is going to say it's not a great game. It's called Kirby Air Ride.
I knew it was going to be Air Ride.
She
talks about that.
This is a 3-mode semi-kart racing game that's kind of open world where you just kind of fly around on these various stars or vehicles and get weapons until an arbitrary timer ticks down. I don't remember there ever being like a goal or whatever. We just kind of played and drove around until different things happened. Never had any idea what the point of the game was, how to beat it, or where it was going. But it was kind of wild.
Yeah, that's a deep cut. I knew that when you started talking about that, I figured that was the game you're going to go to, that one or Super Monkey Ball. But I don't know that anybody would say Monkey Ball would be a below average game.
I think monkey balls are universally beloved, and anyone who's like, it's a great party game. Kirby Air Ride, though, like you gotta have a connection to that game for a specific time of your life. Like there's no one out there with a Kirby Air Ride shirt going like best Kirby moment ever.
That makes me think of one again. Nicole, she probably plays a little bit more than Rachel ever did, but she doesn't really so much these days at all. But back on our GameCube, there was a game that she would play a lot, and I don't even know why we owned it, like where it even came from. But Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, it was like a generic like mascot platformers type of thing, So like anything from that era. It's just you look at that game, you watch some gameplay of it, and it's not bringing in any excitement to anybody. But for whatever reason, she enjoyed playing that game, and she'd get stuck on the occasional like part or two, and so like I'd have to like jump in and play, but that just meant that I had to keep up with the game enough to like know like, oh, what is the new mechanic, like, oh, you have this ability to swing now, like, oh, okay, I gotta like keep that in the back of my mind. And so like I was basically having to remember and master this game that like was just as bland can be, and it really was not exciting at all. And I think I remember being like really like critical of it and everything, and one time she was really upset that I was really, really critical with it, and we looked it up on like Metacritic or something like that, and it's got like it gets like in the 70s or something like that, so it's definitely an average game, but it was way better than like I had thought. I thought for sure it was one that was like reviewed like super low historically and was just forgotten to history, but it did okay review wise, and I don't know why, because in that era people were playing Jak and Daxter or Ratchet and Clank or Mario. What was the GameCube one? Mario Sunshine. Like there was a lot of character platform style games that you could play over that one, and we owned it. GameCube.
Kirby Air Ride has a mixed or average score of 61, but its user score is 8.1. Its most recent reviews are 9s and 10s, stating the game is the best of all time. One user, Ostrich Prophet, just said peak. This review was September 26th, 2023.
People still playing it. I wonder where they're playing it. Just the original GameCube game, because I don't think it's been re-released or anything. Yeah, I don't think it is on any other platforms. They attempted to do some spiritual follow-up, I think, to it. I think there wasn't like another like Kirby Flight-ish game, I swear I remember that being maybe on the Wii. I don't know.
Just looking at the package, the Player's Choice branding, the bestseller badge, Like what was going on with GameCube that this game struck with so many people?
It's GameCube.
Oh,
So it was the GameCube. But cool. That's a brief episode. Yeah, I don't got any other ones that jump out to me necessarily. I jokingly told you when we were right before I hit record, but Monster in My Pocket for the NES. That was just like a generic NES game, but for whatever reason, I just do remember enjoying that game a lot. I don't remember any specifics of the mechanics or anything about it. Just was like a side-scrolling kind of platforming action title, but.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of NES games that exist in that era that weren't Castlevania that I would play because I was like, well, they're almost Castlevania, like Low G-Man or
Low G-Man.
It just like his ability, he could jump high.
Low gravity.
Low gravity, so he could jump high. But it was one of those like early era games that was created by someone that like did not care about the user or the player and was like, oh yeah, then it's like super hard right here and you just die.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's not very fun, early Nintendo developer.
It reminds you of Captain Skyhawk. That was like a flight game, like a shooter type of thing.
That game was so hard.
Yeah, and it was like, you'd have like the first 3 or 4 worlds, you're kind of like, oh, I'm good at this. And then like suddenly like the difficulty escalated and there was like weird like left and right path type situation where like you had to hard go left or hard go right or you just crash into the world and die. And yeah, I remember having fun with it.
We bought the VHS cassette How to Score More Points in Video Games, the volume specifically that had Captain Skyhawk in it, to see if we can score more points in video games.
Yeah.
I recall it being roughly 45 seconds of a basic overview of how Captain Skyhawk is played. But other games in the How to Score More Points in Video Games series, which was hosted by a pair of disembodied white hands, it was like he would do full walkthroughs. Like there was like a Metal Gear one that was like a complete walkthrough of how to get every cheat. But Captain Skyhawk was like, and then you're just over and done with. I was like, this is not going to help us win.
Yeah, it didn't. It didn't. But it was cool to see some games we didn't own. Like, oh, hey, we don't have this game, but this is what that game would be like. Oh, that would be fun. I'm poor. I can't afford another game, so I'll just watch this person play a game. Fast forward 35 years, boot up Twitch when you're trying to like look at some new games and like, hey, I'll just watch this guy play this game. That's fine. It's still something I would do.
Still, to this day, we're going to watch some Twitch tonight while I'm working.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for joining me again then, Casey. That was a good one. And we will have you again on a future episode for sure.
Thanks for having me.